What's up, guys? I am back with some more deck videos. I do apologize. It's been a little while since I've been doing these. Been on a little bit of a hiatus. Had a lot of personal stuff come up. Work got super busy. But I am back, baby. And what better deck to start with than Azir Irelia? As you can see by the title, yes, this deck is straight busted. This is basically tier 0. Everybody thought, okay, after a little while, this is going to end up getting countered or whatever. It didn't. Newsflash, it didn't. It didn't fall off. This is all over ladder. This deck goes off by turn 5 or 6 almost every time. It's so consistent. And when you get the nuts draws, it's just, there's no way to counter it 9 times out of 10. So with that said, as per usual, we're going to go ahead and get through the deck itself. Going to go through this real quick. With that said, as per usual, we're going to go through the deck itself. Going to go through this real quick, and then we get 2 quick games that, oh hey, they're quick because this deck is redonkulous and just ended them super quick. One's actually a mirror match too, which is pretty fun to talk about too. So, but with that said, the deck, here we go. This is a pretty typical build. Just a few cards I want to point out here. Dune Keeper, super useful just to go wide, and honestly in the mirror match, this is pretty useful as a defensive tool as well, believe it or not. Dancing Droplet. This card is not as strong as people thought it would be in basically decks outside of this. Is it really good in this deck? Hell yes. Outside of this deck, we haven't really seen it being played much, but then again, this deck is also kind of taking over the meta, so maybe that's kind of why. Sparring Student. Listen. This card has seen no play since it first came out. It is busted now. This on turn like 3 or 4, you can get this up to like an 8 attack or something. I don't know what the numbers are. Regardless, it's really high attack and health. Allows you to do such a stupid amount of damage, as does Green Glade Duo. So 9 times out of 10, if you have one or the other in hand, you're going to be wrecking your opponent super fast. You know, especially with this being elusive, you know, unless your opponent has removal to deal with this, they're screwed. So decks that you go up against that don't have removal, guess what? Green Glade Duo is just going to end the game, which is actually, I think, what you see here in the first aggro matchup that we go up against. Listen, all these other things, and this is my problem with the deck right now, is why I think it's so busted. This whole flawless duet and you know, blade dancing mechanic is I think broken. I think it's too cheap for what it does right now. You know, the fact that this essentially equates to 3 mana to get a whole nother attack phase, essentially. It's basically like a rally. It seems really cheap, especially because you also get a recall on top of that, which 9 times out of 10, in a deck like this, you're going to be using the recall to your advantage. Azir, busted, leveled up, 2/6 is insane. He also provides a really good blocker as well, especially in the mirror match. That 5 health can chump block a lot of the 1/1 Sand Soldiers coming in. Aurelia is so fun. As broken as she is, which those of you who have played League of Legends, you can understand why, what I mean by she's either really busted or super bad. In this case, she came to Runeterra pretty busted. She's very fun, and on top of that, when you do eventually get to Blade Surge, that you probably are ending the game if you level up Irelia. Let's just be honest there. Homecoming, a lot of the time as well, can also actually just completely save games for you. This deck's bad matchups are largely in part saved with something like Homecoming, and actually Green Glade Duo helps with those as well. So we'll go ahead. We'll see. You'll see exactly what I mean. We're going to get into 2 games. One I think is versus Aggro. The other versus a mirror match. So let's go ahead and take a look. All right. So here we go. First game. This is Noxus Shurima Aggro. We've all seen this before. A lot of the times actually playing Draven and or Darius as like a one-of. But this one's just playing Azir. You'll notice too, I kept the Dancing Droplet. I kept the Azir. Azir Irelia, if you and Emperor's Diaz, if you get those first turn, you just win. I know that sounds like a really easy way to describe this deck, but trust me, just mulligan for those. So we do end up going with the Dancing Droplet here. One of the things in the matchups versus other aggro decks, because this deck is actually relatively weak towards other aggro decks, is probably one of the only weaknesses it has. You will generally, in my experience, win out on the card advantage game, right? You have these infinite card advantage generators like Emperor's Diaz, like Azir. They're constantly summoning these Sand Soldiers that you get for free. Whereas, although actually, my opponent does have an Azir, so I'm going to have to look out for that. But they don't have all the extra stuff that I have in all these blade dances, essentially. So you will generally win out on card advantage. Having the Emperor's Deus up on our opponent, super, super helpful as well. Dune Keeper, obviously going to help us go wide. But it's just very important to have that mentality in this aggro matchup because you want to be making trades. You will generally have more units than your opponent. So if you can get your opponent to make trades like we did with that Dancing Droplet first turn, you're generally going to win out. The other thing in this matchup, we mentioned Greenglade Duo before. This card is nuts. Look at it. Look at it. Look at it. It's a 6-1. It's turn 4. It's a 6-1. And it's only going to get worse. Every single turn, it's going to be even bigger and badder. So unless our opponent has something like Ruthless Raider to give it vulnerable and actually pull it, get rid of it, there's going to be a big problem. Nopify actually really big in these aggro matchups as well. On that Ruin, I actually didn't even talk about this in the deck list either. It's big on the Ruinous Path because it prevents the draw. Also, the Drain, like that is one of the advantages that my opponent has in this matchup is the additional Drain to stay in the game a little bit longer. But it also prevents things like Noxian Fervor, all those smaller burn spells. Not Decimate, unfortunately, but still, you know, Nopifying and Noxian Fervor feels really, really good. So that was actually a pretty good Nopify that we were able to get off there. But still, all right, there's the, sorry, Ruthless Hunter, I meant Ruthless Hunter, not Raider. The Vulnerable's coming out, which actually they played it post-combat, so I'm not really sure what they were thinking there. The fact that we get another attack with Greenglade Duo means we're probably just going to win at this point. That was a huge mistake, I think, from my opponent. But this is what I mean. Look at this. Look how undercosted this is. It's a 2-1, which actually turns into a 4-1 because of our board, which is pretty nuts right here. But it's a 2-1 that just on summon, or on play, I should say, because this is a play effect, not a summon effect, go to 3-1 and 2 4-1s that deal 1 damage to Nexus if they strike. So now this basically clears my opponent's board. I still haven't even used my attack token yet. And look what my opponent's left with. And I have 2 leading follows in hand. This is what I mean by this deck. This deck has access to a redonkulous amount of rally effects for basically free. It might as well be free. The fact that I just had that first attack go through and then this one goes through is insane. This 8-1, we just had a 6-1 Greenglade Duo. Now it's an 8-1. This is stupid. This is exactly why this deck is tier 0 right now. I think this was the game where after I won, I started laughing and I'm like, what? Like, what just happened? All right, the mirror match. I think this game's pretty bonkers too, though. So this honestly is probably what you're going to see a lot of because you got all them degenerates out there playing the same freaking aggro deck. Mr. Emotional, where you at? Where you at, Mo? Playing Azir Irelia. Don't lie. I know you're doing it. This matchup, basically you just have to mulligan for the nuts. Is essentially the easiest way to explain that. So what I mean by that is you need Dias, however the hell you want to pronounce it. You need Irelia. You need Azir. Oh, hey, look, we have those in hand. I mean, just this hand alone, we're probably going to win. On top of that, actually, Nopify in the mirror is pretty good, too, because you can deny something like a lead and follow, which will end up being really good. Or any of those if they are playing Retreat, which our version is playing Retreat. Some don't. They opt for Syncopation or, you know, other spells. But what I do want to point out, though, is Greenglade Duo. So Greenglade Duo seems like a big investment at 2 mana for not really getting any additional utility out of it other than it's just going to, like, go face and do a lot of damage. Whereas all these other, like, literally everything else in hand. Like, everything. Azir actually creates units. Irelia creates units. Dunekeeper creates another unit. Like, everything in hand does something. Greenglade Duo feels like it's a waste of 2 mana, right? Wrong. In certain matchups, like this matchup, you will almost always be able to punch through with Greenglade Duo. I actually found myself, oddly enough, playing it on turn 2 a lot more than I thought. It's not, by no means is this the best turn 2 play. But if you have the attack token on turn 2, and you don't have Dias down or Dias, or you don't have like any other sort of better play, like a Sparring Student into a Dunekeeper, which is a really good turn 2 play as well with the attack token, which you see the Sparring Student here. It still feels good to punch through for 2 damage, elusive, and then now you have it developed for the rest of the game. Whereas late in the game, when you're trying to close things out, that 2 mana investment actually feels even worse than it does in the early game. And what it does in the early game, because you are able to get it down on turn 2 like that, it actually it pushes that much more pressure onto the opponent. Which you can see here too. Like now that we already had her down, look at this. Look at it. What is this? This is turn 4. This is turn 4. We have a 7-1, a 5-5. Wait, never mind. That's going to change in a second because Azir is going to summon another unit. Duh. Watch. So we're going to have an 8-1, a 6-6. What in the Christ? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And actually, I think the way we have it set up, they could technically block the Irelia, but it's not going to kill it. Okay, so we're just going to retreat and save the 6 damage. This is stupid. That is stupid. And now I basically win because I have the Nopify, right? Like I mentioned before, this Dunekeeper actually super useful in the mirror match because if my opponent does go wide to try to push the last damage, because basically this is the turn they have to push 11 damage. No way in hell they're doing it because they just spent all their mana on Inspired Marshal. But that's sometimes the difference maker, and if you can chump block a lot with your Azir or chump block with this Dunekeeper playing it on a defensive turn, 9 times out of 10 you'll prevent more damage than your opponent can prevent, and that's really just the difference in this matchup is who's going to be able to make that final push for lethal first, right, on the earliest turn of the game. But this is dumb. This is turn 5. We're going to win on turn 6. This deck usually wins on turn 6, but this is exactly what I mean. This is busted. Again, turn 5-1, 4-4. And we once again take home the game. It's insane. Alright, that's going to do it. This deck, I avoided playing this deck. The first time I picked it up, which was this past weekend, I went 10-1 in the first 11 games I played. This deck is stupid. The only game I lost was a mirror match. And they drew the nuts. Which, like I said, like Emperor's Deus, Azir, Irelia, like you can't do anything about that. And I just drew crap. The only thing you can do about that is if you draw the same, right? So, just play it. I know I'm probably encouraging degeneracy right now, but like if you want a ladder, play this deck. Join the degeneracy. It's fine. Just come to the dark side. It's okay, guys. But with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully I'll be getting more of these out. Like I mentioned, definitely going to try to stick to more of a schedule lately. And as always, everybody stay healthy, stay positive. I hope shit just works for you. Peace out.